Hey friends, thanks for clicking on this link. I hope you enjoyed the comparison I did of the Triumph cards of the two Tattoo Tarot decks that I had. The first one was Tattoo Tarot Ink and Intuition, and the second one is the Vintage Tattoo Tarot deck. And I had to censor certain cards from this deck because, as you know, I was reported for indecency. So in any offending cards, please be made aware in advance. They have been covered with painter's tape. And it's been necessary, since I got in trouble for this particular deck, for me to make my statement, which is, this channel is intended for people older than 18 who enjoy tarot content and are interested in learning the art of tarot interpretation. My videos include commentary on a variety of topics and decks, and demonstration tarot readings to illustrate ways the cards might be interpreted. Historically, tarot art might include partial nudity, similar to what may be seen in any art museum. If you are bothered by any aspect of tarot, please be advised that this channel is not intended for you or your children. Okay, without further ado, let me flip the camera and take a look at both of these beautiful tarot decks. Alrighty, here we have the aces. As I mentioned in the other video, the palette of the Ink and Intuition tarot deck seems to be more traditional, with more traditional colored tattoo ink. Now here, with this suit, we get the sense, since the hand is pierced and we have the blood tip on the sword, we get a sense that there's a certain, we're reminded that there's danger with swords, or that there, this suit might represent aggression, Here we have other options, it could be aggression. After all, it is a weapon, but it could suggest opportunity, a new beginning in some area, that's active, or, some type of activity or some type of action. This seems more like beware, action sometimes is painful. Oh, what happened to my two? I got it out of order. Okay. If you're interested in knowing about the cardstock, etc., that would be in the first video. So here we have just a traditional, we do have the curvature of the swords, so they're more like scimitars, which is in keeping with traditional TDM, right? Not configured in the same way, but at least they're this, similar shape. And here we have more, typical swords. So in both, they kind of have a pip style nature. But then here we go. So here we see the Three of Swords, as we see many times in Rider-Waite-Smith decks. Very quickly after the Ace of Swords, very soon after, we have Heartache. This is interesting. We have the three scimitars, and we have a cobweb back here, and then we have a spider, which is a very interesting take on the Three of Swords. We have Four Swords. And now here, I noticed with this deck, Ink and Intuition, that the swords are kind of confusing. They get a little confusing, and it's helpful to have the Four Swords. So here we have a girl who is distressed, right? She's got something hanging over her head that's distressing her. In this, and there was nothing to censor in this because he's got a skull in that spot, so there's nothing obscene here. But here we're reminded of the frailty of 5, which is a human number, right? We have that figure of the Vesuvius man. I forget the proper, I think it's Vesuvius man, or something. I apologize if I'm not remembering the name correctly, but he's lost his head. So it's the frailty of humanity, which is how I see 5. And here we just have 5 swords. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, there is a suggestion that swords do damage. It is a weapon. Now here, if you look at it sideways, you might be remembered of a boat sailing in the 6 of swords in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I don't know if that's what the intention was, but it kind of reminds me of it. Or you can see it as a pip deck with 6 swords. Here, again, we do have, a reference to water, just 6 swords. So in some ways, both decks can be read as pip decks, but since they're illustrative and they have things in addition to their pips or to their symbols, like for example, we have 7 swords here, and then we have a handshake, and the hand of this other guy is the venomous bite of a snake, right? So it's like, be careful moving forward. Be careful moving forward, because you might be making a deal with somebody. Or you might be moving forward in a direction that's not going to serve you well. So that's a really cool representation of 7 of swords. Now, it might not be the 7, the interpretation I would normally have, but if you read the deck, you can't help but notice that. So if you're reading the deck about moving forward in some capacity, I think it would behoove us to mention, be careful. Be careful of who you're moving forward with. This is the card that I think actually got me in trouble, and I censored it, so there's no indecent thing being shown here. But we have the 8 of swords. I think, especially in the suits of that are weapons, like the swords and the batons. Up until we get to the 8, for me, usually it's like a building up. But after we get past the 8, it starts to become like a physical manifestation. So here we have a building up. Now I do see 8 as stability. So for me, it could be like the 8 of swords for me in the context of a question, but it could suggest like organization of thought, because I see the suit of swords as thinking, that kind of thing. So I could see this as the manifestation of thought, or not the manifestation, but the organization of thought before you implement something in the physical realm. But here we have kind of a nod more to, the Rider-Waite-Smith of being entrapped in some way. Okay, 9 of swords. And again, with the vintage tattoo, I think we get a sense of like the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition where somebody's really fretting, somebody's very concerned. And in both, I think we have a culmination of what the swords can represent, something coming to an end. It could be, now it just doesn't look wicked or scary. It could be that a trial is coming to an end, or a decision might be made. The swords can represent justice in some ways, right? The court cards of the suit of swords can represent people in the military, or people in justice, or attorneys. They can represent writers, or authors, because of the suit of air, right? So the 10 of swords here, just like we can see, they're taking a stand. So something has been settled, maybe. I think, we can see that in here. But just with the 10 of swords, I would see it, if the swords were just organized nicely, 10 swords, I would just see it as something's, reached its max, it's reached its point, and then it's over, But here we might see it's over, a position has been taken. And here we have the sense of heartache, the 3 of swords, but worse, We have 10 swords piercing the heart. Now, I love in the vintage tarot how the, I think it's the pages and the kings. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I love how the pages are kind of represented by what the suit, suggests, like air, right? So we have a winged little character in this case for the page. Now remember, the valet or the page or the knaves traditionally served the knights. So they were there, like they were like the apprentice before they would become a knight themselves. So they served the knight, they maybe ran errands or messages or assisted the knight in any way the knight needs to be assisted. But here, like we have like a dark cloud sky, right? A dark sky, a cloudy sky. He doesn't look too friendly. He's got some tattoos on him. Okay, we have the knight. In the vintage tattoo deck, we almost have a Joan of Arc vibe, don't we? Broken chains, and then the sprigs of acacia here. And this knight, now neither knight has a horse. And the knights, of course, were the individuals who assisted who served the king and queen. So they could also be seen as messages, or they could be seen as assistants or help, or they could represent people of a certain age bracket and nature, personality types. These queens mean business. Both cases, these queens are queens who take action. They're not demure, and they're not like, they're women of the world. Here are Kings of Swords. Different takes. And moving on to the Suit of Cups. Beautiful. I think they're both really beautiful, and I particularly like this one. Isn't that lovely? They both have a religious feel to them as chalices. And we have the dove, or the bird of peace, and we have the eye of God in this one. So, if we think of the aces as the beginnings in the realm of whatever suit this is, the beginning of emotions or an emotional opportunity or something, related to love. Here we have a very upbeat thought. We have a rainbow, we have a couple, right? And they're making a toast, and there's some spillage. And here we have hearts that's reminding us of, a bond between two individuals that could be emotional, could be an emotional bond. Not always necessarily, but a bond of emotional satisfaction for both parties. Now, 3 of Cups is just continuing with the theme, except including someone else. A little bit of a growth, broadening of horizons, right? A collection of 3 individuals who maybe are having fun or involved in something. Now, for me, 4 is a stable number. It's organization. It's not quite 8, but it's, it represents a certain stability. Sometimes 4s and 8s are so stable that they could be boring, or, there could be some boredom. Here, now this one's really interesting. Now, my take on it is different than what it says in the book. But for me, it seemed like 4 people are in agreement or have some kind of bond with one another, or they're celebrating something. maybe against a person who's not present. That's not what I think the meaning is in the booklet. But that's how I see this card, which is kind of an interesting image. Okay, again, 5 is a number, human frailty. So we do see in both cards a sense of human emotion, maybe being sad because we have eyes that are crying in both cases. So these are almost pip cards, but not quite. And we have 6 cups. Again, happiness. I mean, there's somebody's celebrating something. And so we're having some, probably maybe champagne, a special drink. It's generosity because it's spilling down into the others. Six is a perfect number, so we have kind of like peace or love represented there. And I think just joy represented here. This 7, this card has been censored, obviously. 7 cups. For me, transitioning to the next stage of something regarding the emotions, and you put it in the context of the question. And here we have somebody who's thinking, perhaps, of the next stage or the next phase. Now here, as I've mentioned, for me, 8 means stability, organization of thought until we hit the physical aspects of that card or that suit. Here, the 8 is representing someone who's so distraught before maybe a physical manifestation occurs. I don't know. But here we have a buildup of emotion that might be overwhelming the individual. And here we have I would see this as stability of emotion because we have 8. 8 is stable for me. Okay, we have the wish fulfillment card. This probably looks like a lucky card. I see no reason why I couldn't use this card as wish fulfillment. And I see no reason why I couldn't use this card as wish fulfillment. That's how I see 9 cups. Because I see 9 as the culmination of emotion, suit and number, right? So culmination of emotion, and unless, the cards around it are suggesting a negative thing, I have no reason why I wouldn't want to suggest that it was happy fulfillment. Here we have 10. Oh, everything's just hunky-donkey. Everything's just hunky-dory, right? We have a rainbow. We have so much we can share with tiers of cups. And here we actually have a peace sign in the background. And I love this version of my boyfriend card. We have the Page of Cups. Just like the Suit of Swords, there was a bird. Here we have a fish in a champagne. Oh, no, not a champagne. What is that? A cocktail. A martini glass, perhaps. It's kind of fun. And here we have a more traditional. He's not full, not a full figure, but he's just the bust and the head and the hand of the Knave of Cups. Another censored card. The Knight not being on a horse, but being a merman. And just the bust and the suit and a bird for the suit, the Knight of Cups, rather. Here we have Queen of Cups. Now she looks like she's not in charge of her emotions. The Queen of Cups unless, like the way I would see it, unless she was surrounded by fire cards or whatever, I would see her as a stable individual, a woman who has mastered her emotions. But here, I think the feeling we get is an individual who maybe hasn't mastered their emotion. But here, I think we have a woman who is in charge of her emotions. And unless she was surrounded by fire, I would see no reason not to understand her that way. And here, the King of Cups here again is very emo, right? Very emotional. Could they be tears of joy? Maybe. But I'm not convinced that he's happy. And here we have a more contented looking King of Cups. Okay, suit of wands, the ace. In both cases, they look like new energy, This one, the wand is being stirred, so like stirring up, and we see the leaves from the sprigs of acacia even like getting circulated in the whirlwind of air. So energy, physical energy. Now I see the suit of batons, certainly as a creative suit. Energy, it's fire. But I also see it as social, right? I also understand it as a social suit. And here we have a lovely depiction as well. Here we have a collaboration between two people, maybe for a project or something that they want to do together. We know it's two people because people don't typically have hands of different color. And here we're free to interpret two batons as we see fit without too much representation, although we do seem to have a brick wall or something depicted there. Now, batons is another weapon, it could be a suit of aggression, and we're kind of reminded of that, three batons, just like the Three of Swords, got very quickly into the danger realm, right? We have a rabbit or a hare jumping through a hoop of fire. So we're reminded of the dangerous aspect of batons and fire and creative energy. Here, I think we're free to understand the Three of Wands, how we, without a preconceived idea. I'm not saying either way is wrong. It's just that one is a little more inclined to be more pip, and the other has other ideas maybe built into it. So we have Four of Wands, Four of Batons. So we have, like four individuals. I'm thinking they must be, because two people even wouldn't have their hands like, these have to be individual people because of the way the hands are presented. So four people creating something or damaging something. It's four people collaboratively causing harm to something, or collaboratively maybe changing something from one thing to another. I don't know. And then we can read the Four of Batons in the way we see fit, because we simply have four batons. Reminded in this that 5 is a disruptive number coming from the stability of a 4, right? So just like we saw, I think it was with the 7 of the one where the shaking hands with the serpent. Was that 7 of Swords? Well, here we have another suggestion of be careful moving forward. There's the snake and the eagle, they don't get along too good. And these arrows are just, aggressively being shot through the air. So take care moving forward in this project. If you see batons as a creative energy or creative collaboration of a social nature, right? Be careful. And then here, you can see it that way or any way you see the 5 of batons. Here with the 6, we get a sense of Rider-Waite-Smith champion, right? Someone who's victorious or something. 6 is a perfect number. So it could be a lovely collaboration. It could just be, success. In both cases, we see the sprigs of acacia right here too. So 6 being a perfect number of the suit of batons, and then seeing the creative energy of fire. But it would be a positive aspect rather than destructive. Here we have a kinetic aspect, not a fiery one, but kinetic, like static electricity kind of energy that I would think I would associate more with the suit of swords maybe, but and we have 8. Stormy day over the ocean. Clouds, raining, and batons either ascending or being dropped with the rain. We almost have the evil eye, the amulet. We have the organization, the stability, structure of 8. Now, if you see the suit of batons as a creative suit, which is, I think, I do, here we see creativity manifesting itself, in a project that might be coming to fruition or expressing oneself as an artist. And here, a certain manifestation, making something happen, seeing a project come, be successful, and time to move on. And we have an organization of 10 wands. We could see this as we wish. Okay, just like with the other pages of the other suits. So we have the suit of batons, the page of the suit of batons represented as a kitty, which is interesting. And here we have a handsome young man with his flames to remind us. He's got an envelope. Maybe he is running an errand to deliver a message. Certain clues. You read the deck, right? We have certain clues, that might remind us of an aspect of the card. We actually do have a knight that's on a horse. I didn't think any of them were on horses. I forgot. So he's playing polo, so it's a cooperative thing that you do with a team. Wow, he's formidable. And a very energetic queen of batons in both cases. She's not a warm and snuggly kind of girl. She's perhaps a hot-natured girl. This girl is actually in a matchbox, dancing with her kittens. But this one has just as much bite. And I wonder if those are matches coming from her hair. Isn't that interesting? Okay, the King of Wands. A most assured fellow. We have the flames in the background to remind us of his action. His activity level is probably higher than most. And here we have a king who looks very overindulgent. He doesn't seem to care. And he's doing all kinds of things that probably aren't good for him, but he's doing it anyway. And here we have our last suit. The suit of coins. They're both called coins, even though the vintage deck references pentacles rather than coins. Here we have a friendly looking swan. A little swan in the background. Very opulent, very, very lovely representation of the Ace of Coins. You know, the opportunity for all things, opportunity for things relating to the physical realm or the things that money can buy. You know, it just seems like we're being offered an opportunity in the realm of the physical. Now, I don't know what the definition in the booklet says for either of these. But, you know, if we see 2 as a number of partnership or some type of bond, here it seems to be suggesting, you know, a certain caution. Yeah, I think I see a certain caution here. A caution of, you know, think carefully. You don't want to get into trouble legally. If you're getting into a partnership for something, think through the angles. And here we have a serpent, you know, and when I see a serpent, I guess, I tend to think of be careful be careful in this bond. Just take care. Here we have number 3 of growth, I think in both. I think we are able to see either one of these in the way we prefer to see them. But I think we can definitely see a sense of growth or, you know, prospering to some degree, because it kind of looks like a plant. And the coins themselves have plants on them rather than being pentacles. And here we have, you know, the tools of, I guess, a mason, you know, so there's a sense of growth, of productivity. Stability of 4. We have 2 people participating in something. So there's not 4 people, there's like 2 people. I'm not exactly sure what this card is, what the representation in the book is, but I see 4 as stability. Here we have a snake, but it's not a threatening snake, is it? So we have kind of runic symbols here, and then a diamond to remind us that it's of the physical realm. I'm kind of curious about what the definition of this card is in the booklet. Let me go check. I'll be right back. Okay, it's the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith of hoarding or collecting. I didn't quite grasp that with the image, but now that I read it, I can see it. Okay, the instability of 5, and in both, isn't that interesting? We have a skull. Isn't that interesting? That they would both represent a 5 of this suit with a skull. You know, it's sometimes it could be a vice, you know, sometimes like having, especially coming off of 4 that represents like hoarding, for example. Sometimes we overindulge and we buy things, we spend money on things, you know, that maybe we shouldn't be spending too much money on, or like not investing our money wisely, right? So 5 being an unstable number might, in the depiction here, you could get a sense of caution about spending your money on whatever. Even here, because of the skull. And we see fire. on the coins, which is interesting. Okay, here, 10. Oh, 6, excuse me. So here we have like a message or something being exchanged between people, thought, a contract. Exchange between two individuals, I'm not really sure. And I think we can see growth here, just like with the 3, except more so. It's coming to fruition. 7, advancement. And we have even a sense of advancement with the arrows, right? We have arrows. And we have an hourglass too. So the advancement of time, maybe. Time invested in school or time invested at a job or whatever. So we have 2 individuals. And they're participating in a singular thing. We have an anvil and a hammer and a light bulb here. It's interesting. Here's another censored card. 9 of coins. Abundance. And 10. We've reached it. We have reached. We have reached the pinnacle. Time for a new project. We've taken this as far as we can go. Graduated college or whatever it is that the money bought. And I think we can read, because it's, a pip deck. We can understand the pips in this deck, I think, how we want to. Without too much interference with symbolism, although there are some items here in all the cards. Okay, for the suit of coins, we have an animal that represents the suit of coins, which would be hare, a rabbit. Fertility could be an aspect of earth. And we have a nice young man. Now, his goal or his thing, his shtick, is in accomplishment of the physical world. Now, most of the time, I think, myself included, we think of the Knight of Coins, or the gentleman or the people, the queen as well, as being maybe the most stable, perhaps pedantic, or the most thinking. Not thinking in the sense of like quick-witted, like the suit of swords, but thinking in the sense of learned or educated, right? But here, look at this Knight of Coins. He's like ridiculously not pedantic. And we have the Queen of Coins, opulent, maybe fertile. Certainly has all the blessings of material comfort. So they're slightly different takes. And here we have the king who's overindulged. Overindulged to the point of he's maybe become somebody who's not the nicest guy. Instead of representing the best of his suit, maybe he's a cautionary tale of what happens if you pursue the physical realm too much. This guy does look like a guy who enjoys the creature comforts that he's accomplished. I wouldn't go so far as to say he's become evil or wicked, but it could be an aspect of him. So, dear friends, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me flip the camera. I hope you've enjoyed having a second opportunity to take a look at these two decks, because it really steamed me that I had to remove them. Now, I don't know that my content is the exact same in both videos. Both, when I do a video, I just kind of do it kind of like what comes to me at the time is what I say. So no two videos are ever going to be the same. And no two videos on the exact same topic are ever going to be the same. So I don't know if I covered the exact same material or not. But I was just bothered by the fact that I was prevented from showing these decks for no other reason than somebody being offended. And it's unfortunate that somebody was offended, but tarot can be controversial. And, if you don't have an open mind, tarot channels are probably not your jam. Anyway, until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be kind, and thank you for clicking on this link. And I know I hardly ever ask, but could you give me a thumbs up? Could you share me, or could you do whatever it takes to help me with the algorithms? I'd appreciate that.